She's the dressmaker's dressmaker. She's your favorite fashion designer's favorite fashion designer. This is Madeleine Vionnet, and it's a crime that her work is not more widely recognized. But I wanted to share with you my master study that I did of Vionnet and the 6 different takeaways that I got from studying her work and figuring out the way that she designed and the philosophy that underpinned it all. First of all, we have distilled essence. Essence is something which has been distilled to refine the desired characteristics. Vionet's designs are highly distilled. There is no unnecessary elements or decorations. Vionnet herself said, "I've never insisted on ornaments. I use them on the sole condition that they complement the construction of the dress, drawing out the entire effect as if to exalt it." So Vionnet has this concept of simplicity. It's all about the construction and the fabric itself. She doesn't just tack on a ribbon or tack on a rhinestone unnecessarily. She also said, "Simplicity is what is the most difficult in the world. It is the last stage of experience and the first effort of genius." It reminds me of that quote that you don't really know something unless you can explain it to a 5-year-old, because you are able to distill it down to the most simple form. The way to design with this essence is to have a concept which is expressed through every single design choice. That allows you to make something highly distilled and highly potent. Working with the 3D female form. While most people, even today, are drafting patterns from 2-dimensional blocks, she was working in the 3rd dimension. Vionnet was draping fabric on a 3rd scale doll. In fabric, you have the warp and the weft thread, and along the diagonal of those two is called the bias. Madeleine Vionnet was maybe not the first person to discover the bias, but she was the first person to design around it. The magic of the bias grain is that it allows woven fabric, which is normally not stretchy, to become flexible. When you drape the bias over the 3D form, the fabric moves like water. It's just the most beautiful way to drape. When a woman smiles, the dress should smile too. Her goal was to magnify woman and to compose with each of her garments a kind of self-contained poem. Normally people avoid designing on the bias because it's so difficult to cut because the fabric will stretch out of shape, but to her that was the most beautiful part of the fabric. Similarly, she was also against corsets, and she wanted the female body to be free to move. So you're seeing that she sees the fabric the way that she sees the female body, which is that the soft, fluid, and flexible parts of it are actually the most beautiful. Designing in the 2nd dimension is static and flat, but the 3rd dimension takes into account the fact that the garments will be moved in. So everyone around Vionnet was working in the 2nd dimension. She was designing in the 3rd dimension, which makes me think, what is the 4th dimension? How can we be designing in the 4th dimension? My very rudimentary explanation of the 4th dimension is that you can see not just what's on the outside of something, but what's on the inside. So the next thing that Vionnet did was she perfected the details. Every detail was important, and she held her work to the highest standard. Every embroidery stitch was done perfectly in the warp or the weft thread so that it wouldn't hinder the way that the fabric hung. You'd have to be there with a magnifying glass, making sure that you're following the grain exactly. But it makes so much sense, because if you were to go slightly off grain, it would change the tension in the fabric, and then you wouldn't get that beautiful bias drape. Vionnet said, "In the giant beehive of my house, each and every bee must be able to carry out to perfection her individual task, which is always her specialty." Her attitude of excellence extended to her role as a leader, and she had an in-house dentist, hospital, and a canteen that her 1,000 employees could access for free. So while most factories at the time were dark, cramped, and uncomfortable, she had a light-filled interior with beautiful stained glass, ergonomic chairs with backrests instead of stools. Treating her employees with coffee breaks and paid holidays was revolutionary at the time. But treating her employees well shows her integrity and character, that excellence and care was of utmost importance to her. The way in which you do something is how you do everything. This is what integrity is. The outward face matches the inner contents. To be working in this way gives you the best chance of reaching the divine. An ancient artist was chiseling the back of his marble statue with great pains. "Why do you carve the tresses on back of the head of your statue so carefully?" asked one. "It will stand high in its niche against the wall, and no one will ever see its back." "The gods will see it," was the reply. As I study the fourth dimension, it seems that it involves seeing inside of and through things. The janitor's closet should be just as beautiful as the storefront window. V&A was inspired by the ancients. She and her design team spent a lot of time sketching and taking photos at museums, examining ancient artifacts for inspiration. In her showroom there were classical friezes which showed a temple procession, but when you look closely you see that the women are actually wearing her clothes. It's clear that she wanted to design something that transcended time, that looked just as home in ancient Greece as it did in the far distant future. To create something timeless, you must have thorough references, precedents, standing on the shoulders of great design which has come before you. Without it, the designs look lazy. Our own eye and judgment is flawed, so we look to the most enduring and outstanding works for inspiration because they have been of a high enough standard to survive time. Camille Paglia says that Apollonian cultures, such as ancient Egypt and classical Greece, were creating artifacts to fix in time and endure in the face of nature's chaos. Entropy takes everything. Whole cities are swallowed up by the Amazon rainforest, and our mark left on this world will be too. Nothing is eternal, but truth remains because we keep reviving it and passing it along. Potent mythology, archetypes, geometry. You know it when you see it. V&A said, "I only like that which lasts forever." V&A actually calls herself an enemy of fashion. She says there is something superficial and volatile about the seasonal and elusive whims of fashion which offends my sense of beauty. Draping is one of the techniques that's used in classical Greece. Sunray pleating, where the pleats spray outward, can be seen on ancient Egyptians. She wasn't making direct replicas of these clothes from Greece and Egypt, but she was analysing the logic to be able to take it to its next evolution. Let's talk about the futurists. So V&A's logo was drawn by Fayat. Forgive my pronunciation, I don't speak French, unfortunately. So in his paintings, lines of energy and movement blur the boundaries between the garment and its surrounding space, creating dynamic movement. This makes sense when I read this part of the Futurist Manifesto. Everything moves, everything runs, everything turns swiftly. The figure in front appears and disappears. Owing to the persistence of images on the retina, objects in motion are multiples and distorted, following one another like waves through space. There is a sense of movement and direction through time and space, being aware of where something came from and where it's going. Plotting 3 points on a graph allows us to see a direction through time and space. V&A didn't copy the ancients, she evolved their designs. Similarly, our task isn't to copy great art, but to find its next evolution. To observe the outlines and try and figure out how the geometry evolves dynamically. Lastly, we get to the pillars, and I think it's only fair to call them pillars because of V&A's love of classical Greece. According to my research, V&A had 4 pillars: proportion, balance, movement, and truth. To create from a place of integrity, you must have consciously chosen your values. If you haven't, they will be unconsciously chosen for you. Greed, quantity over quality, laziness, indifference. The fashion industry is currently corrupted by these unconscious values. When you live by your values, the way you deal with rubbish is the same way you deal with your clients, and the same way you market your work is the way that you finish the hidden seams inside the garment. That brings us to the end of our V&A Master's study. I had a green tea and I forgot to drink it. There are some really great resources out there. One of my favourite things about V&A is that she insisted on the archiving of her work. I think she understood that it was going to be really important in the future. Betty Kirk made a book about V&A and it includes the patterns for her designs. So I highly recommend choosing one and constructing it to understand the logic that V&A used. The Betty Kirk version is not to scale. However, there's a Japanese book called V&A. So the patterns in the book are to scale. You can see there's a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter grid. The books are out there. They're also for free on the Internet Archive. So do with that information what you will. So to understand her logic, it's all about the construction and the fabric. So you really have to get in there hands-on and try and make it. I have 2 times tried to make this cape unsuccessfully because it was really, really challenging, but I'm going to try again. The 3rd time I made it out of paper, like with the paper pattern. I used the paper pattern and I taped it together. And I feel like I almost got there. So we will get there eventually, and I'll film the process and upload it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed learning about Vianney's work. Next month we will be doing a master study on Coco Chanel. See you then.